The fifth lecture concerning the trumpets. The second trumpet. After this there was an interval of peace. In 20 years the time came for the second trumpet to sound. This was to affect the sea. A great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures that were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. We have already had to notice the mixing of the literal and symbolic as a characteristic of the scenes of the Apocalypse. The sea used symbolically stands for the populations of the earth, Revelation 17, verse 15. But here the sea is used geographically as an indicative of the section of the Roman Empire next to be affected, viz., the maritime parts all along the coasts of the Mediterranean. Further on, the Euphrates is used symbolically of the power occupying the Euphratean territory, and yet its employment is a literal indication of the territory where the power is to be found. In this there is mixture without confusion. The public are accustomed to it in the political cartoons of the day. Mr. Gladstone digging a grave for religious texts from within sight of the Houses of Parliament in the background is a picture misunderstood by none, though blending the literal and symbolic in a very marked manner. The symbolic mountain of the second trumpet was to be cast into the literal sea. The sea of the Roman Empire is the Mediterranean Sea. What mountain can be cast upon this sea with the destructive effects exhibited in the symbolism? The next page in the history of Roman troubles supplies the answer. It brings before us the Vandal nation which, under the first trumpet, had settled in Spain. This was the mountain, as the sequel will show. It is no uncommon thing in the prophetic scriptures to employ a mountain in this political sense. Babylon is styled a destroying mountain, Jeremiah 51, verse 25. The kingdom of God a great mountain, filling the whole earth, Daniel 2, verse 35 to 44. The Vandal mountain was thrown upon the Roman sea in this way. In Spain, where the Vandals were established, jealousy broke out between two of the leading generals of the Roman army. This led to war between the two sections of the army, owning their respective leadership. In the conflict that ensued, one of them enlisted the aid of the Vandals, who, becoming thus aware of the weakness of Rome, formed the purpose of subverting the Roman power in Africa. In execution of this purpose, the Vandals crossed the Straits of Gibraltar. The breadth across is only 15 miles. Across this narrow neck of sea, Genseric, the Vandal leader, led his people, and proceeded with wonderful rapidity and vigour to overthrow the Roman power all along the Mediterranean margin of northern Africa. His career was a most successful one and mostly maritime. He formed a large navy, with which he scoured the coasts and islands of the entire Mediterranean, almost without opposition. His devastations were widespread and grievous. He carried horses and horse soldiers in his ships, and wherever his ships came to anchor, these were landed and carried fire and sword in all directions. Tidings of these grievous visitations reached Rome. Rome attempted to stop them by fitting out a rival fleet and sending it to Carthage to attack Genseric's fleet, which lay there on a certain occasion. Genseric heard of the approach of the Roman fleet, comprising hundreds of ships. He got ready fireships, which were let loose among the Roman ships on their arrival. The Roman fleet caught fire and was destroyed amid scenes of terrible confusion, aggravated by the attacks of the Vandals. The Romans got together a second fleet, but Genseric anticipated their movements by sailing to Rome and subjecting it to calamities of a like nature with those inflicted by Alaric. All these evils affected the Roman third of the empire. They involved the sweeping of all Roman ships from the sea and the destruction of all Roman opposition to the Vandals within the maritime area of the Vandal triumph. Such events could not better be symbolized than by the precipitation of a burning mountain into the sea to the destruction of the ships and souls. They occupied a period of 20 years, and bring us to the middle of the 5th century, and the sounding of the third trumpet. When the third angel sounded, there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters, and the name of the star is called Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Ordinarily, a star falling from heaven means the fall of an eminent personage from power. But that cannot be the only meaning in this case, because of the effects following the fall. It fell upon a region described as the third part of the rivers and fountains of waters, with the result of inflicting great and fatal bitterness on the populations of the country so described. This does not usually follow as the result of a fall from power. Therefore it is the military motions of a political personage who inflicts great suffering before disappearing from view that are exhibited to us. Not only a star, but a great star, a blazing meteoric body, not fixed in the regular heavens, but having a wandering and short-lived place in the heavens, a powerful military leader of brilliant but brief career. These features exactly answer to the case of the next chapter in Roman history. When the woes of the second trumpet had subsided, Attila, the king of the Huns, established in the Illyrian third of the Roman Empire, with the recognition of both the eastern and western sections of the empire, became a terrible scourge to the Roman or western third. His devastations were principally inflicted on the alpine regions of northern Italy, to which the description "the rivers and fountains of waters" is peculiarly applicable. As a characteristic description, it could not apply to any other region of the Roman Empire. The earth is cut up in that region as it is nowhere else, with multitudinous rivers and streams forming a complicated network covering the land. These are fed by the inexhaustible supplies descending from the eternal snows and glaciers of the Alpine mountain range. On these, the rivers and fountains of waters in the Roman Empire, Attila's hand descended heavily. It is needless to recount particulars. Repeat the history of Alaric, and you have substantially the story of Attila. He made war on the Roman Empire on a formidable scale, and with terrible effect. Success everywhere attended the march of his barbarian hordes, and desolation marked their track. Several provinces were depopulated by his armies. The only exception was on the eastern frontiers of France, where the Roman troops and their Gothic allies inflicted a check in the obstinate and bloody Battle of Chalons. It was merely a check, however. It diverted the course of Attila's victories, but did not put a stop to them. It was necessary, perhaps, to give them the right direction. It sent him into Italy, where his work particularly lay. Here his power was irresistible. Wherever he went, according to an historian, all was flight, depopulation, slaughter, slavery, and despair. Figuratively, he made the waters of public and private life bitter everywhere, with fatal effect to the drinkers. Wormwood was an appropriate name for the agent of such effects. But there seems a geographical reason for this name in addition. Wormwood, Absinthos, is the name of a river in the Illyrian region ruled by Attila. This river would therefore be as characteristic of Illyria and the Illyrian ruler as the Nile is of Egypt or the Thames of England. It is a happy combination which, in the same name, gives us the local origin of the great star, and the effect which his movements would produce on the Western Roman third. When his work was done, his power and family disappeared. He was a great star while on the scene, but only a wandering star, not a fixed luminary in the political heavens, a meteor, which rushed and blazed with destructive brightness, and then disappeared in the midst of the destruction he caused. Though the destructive great star of the third trumpet thus twinkled out, the effects of its course were not of this meteoric character. The Roman Empire was going to pieces under these repeated blows. The successive inroads of the Goths and Vandals, Huns, etc., were disintegrating the empire of the Roman iron and introducing the clay of the image feet, and they were laying the basis of the modern system of nations. In this respect, they fulfilled an important purpose in the plan of providence. It was not to the purpose of God that there should be another universal empire. The triumph of a succession of barbarian leaders, besides inflicting merited retribution on the destroyers of his word and his people, prevented the continuance of power at one centre. It broke up the vast fabric of human power erected by Augustus, and scattered the energies of the human race over a wide area, with the result of forming numerous centres of industry and refinement in the various capitals resulting from the subdivision of power. Thus was more effectively promoted that work of subduing and replenishing the earth as a necessary preparation for the kingdom of Christ. If we contrast the world of that age with the world of this, we see what has been done. The countries of Europe were at that time largely covered with forest and uninhabitable. Now they are ripe and ready for transfer to that government which is to break in pieces all human governments. It is another among many illustrations of the diversity of purposes served by one and the same divine instrumentality. The 12th verse of chapter 8 introduces us to what every reader of the Apocalypse has felt to be the obscure symbolism of the fourth trumpet. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. The meaning of this apparently impenetrable enigma is to be found in a contemplation of the events succeeding to those of the third trumpet. Those events involve the eclipse of the Roman sun, moon, and stars in a third part of them. That is to say, a third part of the Roman Empire, the western third, was extinguished and its place occupied by the kingdom of the Goths. The events of the first, second, and third trumpets, as already remarked, had reduced the power of Rome to the last extremity, the semblance of empire, but with none of the vigour that had for centuries controlled the world. There was still an emperor in Rome, but the barbarians whom the first three trumpets had called into the empire were the virtual masters of the state, and soon became its nominal and actual masters. The emperor at this period was in fact a nominee of the barbarians. He was the son of one of Attila's ministers, Orestes, the foreign secretary, and placed on the throne by that official. The name of this shadow of an emperor, this last of the emperors, was Romulus Augustulus. He was a weak man and a mere tool in the hand of the barbarians, who finally disposed of him in this way. The barbarians demanded that the third part of the revenue of the country should be divided amongst them. To this Romulus Augustulus and Orestes his father would not consent, whereupon the barbarians revolted under the leadership of one of themselves, named Odoacer, in the war ensuing upon which Romulus was overthrown. Romulus was then compelled by Odoacer to send his resignation to the Roman emperor of the Eastern Third, Zeno, reigning at Constantinople, and at the same time to make request that the throne of universal empire should be transferred from Rome to Constantinople, and that Odoacer should be appointed the representative of the Eastern Emperor in the West. This resignation and petition were accepted, and for 14 years Odoacer, king of the Goths, reigned in Rome as the representative of the Eastern Roman Emperor. But even this lingering light of Roman imperialism in the West was to be extinguished as the simples required. Theodoric, king of the Ostrogoths, made his appearance from the north, and in a succession of battles overthrew the power of Odoacer, on whose assassination, AD 493, Theodoric set up the kingdom of the Goths in total independence of the Eastern Emperor. The Roman Empire then ceased to exist in the Western Third. The result was a state of things exactly answering to the symbols. The Roman sun, moon, and stars were shining insofar as the Roman Empire continued to exist in other parts, but they were under eclipse in the Western Third, which, historically considered, was the principal third, and therefore these bodies, considered as political symbols of the system, shone not for a third part of the Roman day and night. Plainly speaking, the fourth trumpet foreshadowed the extinction of the Roman Empire in the West, in a manner intelligible enough when it is recognized that a political system is considered as the figurative counterpart of the natural universe of sun, moon, and stars. The Roman system in the third part was brought under total eclipse by the events following on those of the third trumpet, which is the key to the otherwise dark symbols of the fourth. The first 4 trumpets having accomplished their work in the West, attention was drawn to the remaining 3 in words of foreboding which were amply justified by the terrible events that harassed and afflicted Europe for many centuries after the darkening of the third part of the Roman day and night. John beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels which are yet to sound." The meaning of this it will be our duty to consider in the next